Now that all our deckling's done, what I want to do is sort of lighten this up just a little bit. I mean, if we bring you in, it's looking all dark and it's looking kind of shiny now, and that's just down to putting those gloss coats on and getting our decals nice and sorted. So what I want to do is I'm going to get out number 64, which is a nice light grey, because what we've got is it's sort of like a dark grey going on in there. We want to sort of give it a bit of a highlight, and to do that you want a lighter version, right? So let's just put that there a second. Good idea having kitchen paper towels on standby all the time in this hobby, good for cleaning up stuff, all sorts of stuff you can use for that. I'm just going to get out I mean, really you want a dry brush, but you know, this is a bit of a budget build, so using what we've already been using, our 3mm flat brush, what we're going to do is just dip into our paint just a little bit, right, and on our kitchen paper towel, let's just adjust this, and we're just going to just sort of dry brush this on. We're just going to brush on the paint onto this kitchen paper towel, and what it'll do is it'll transfer most of the paint to the kitchen paper towel, and it should leave our paintbrush a little bit light. In fact, that is maybe a bit too light, right? So I'm just kind of working the paint into the bristles until, as you can see, as we sort of brush along, it gets weaker and weaker, more and more fainter. So then if we come back to our model just here, you know, hopefully what you want to do, you want to start off light when you do your dry brushing. So we're just gonna, let's bring you in a bit closer. We've got some detail work just here. We can just now sort of just brush lightly across this, and hopefully it'll pick out any raised areas. Right, that there needs a little bit more paint on. Right, better to not have enough paint on and not make a mistake than have too much paint on and you end up, you know, kind of ruining your work, and you might have to step back a bit. Right, so I'm just brushing across here, and it will take any sort of edges and lighten them up. And dry brushing is one of these things where, you know, you've got to sort of try not to sort of go too heavy. Right, as soon as you start going heavy, you know, you're almost having strokes of this highlight going on. It's literally, you kind of, you don't really see it at first, but once you've kind of gone past it maybe about 15 times, oh yeah, you know, you start seeing the edges are starting to lighten up. If we bring in the other half, you should be able to see, you know, it's just got that bit of an edge to it which sort of lightens it all up. Right, hopefully you can just see it gives it that bit of a lighten up. You might want to be careful around, say, our actual seat belt area. I mean, you really want to just be careful and just touch it, you know, because we don't want to really sort of hit the grey bits or even sort of the green bits. Alright, but if we can sort of just touch it, right, you're probably just seeing how we got that little bit of a highlight just on there. It's only just a little touch just to give it that little bit extra. We've also got, which I have been doing off camera, we've got all our air intake bit here which I've painted up, and we've also got our intake fan just here which I've already gone off, giving it a good the normal sort of ink wash that I've already shown you. So I'm just cleaning off my paintbrush you know, clean water, clean that up. You need to make sure it's dry, right? Because I mean, when it comes to dry brushing, you clean off your paintbrush, and if it's wet, it kind of really sort of makes the paint thinner, and it kind of ruins it for the next one. So you really want to make sure your paint is dry. So I'm just sort of like folding a kitchen paper towel over and just making sure this is dry. Then I'm going to get out, I do believe it's number 53, which is a silver that you get, which I've already painted this 53 on here. Then we've done the ink wash. Now if you've got in your collection maybe a much lighter silver, this would be a lot nicer, but I'm using the same color, so we're not going to sort of notice this as much. But again, if we just sort of brush across here, it'll just lighten up these areas, and there's some really sort of really raised areas on this for it to lighten up, right? And we can just, you know, backwards and forwards many times. You know, the key to dry brushing is just to remember that, you know, as you're doing it, you start light, right? Because that's where the paint's going to be the most strongest, right? And as it's going down and you're seeing that you're not making as much as effect, you can sort of maybe press down a bit harder, go a bit faster, right? And you'll notice it goes down even more, and it just gives it that nice little edge. As I say, because we're using the same colours what we did our base with, it's not going to come up as much. If you've got a silver that's lighter, that'll come up even more, even nicer. But as I say, we're trying to keep our paint to a minimum with this build. So that's a nice bit of dry brushing. You need to do a little bit of carving now. In the instructions, if you want to put on, let's just get it out for you. If you want to put on the actual fuel tank, which is just here, it's got this question marker saying, you know, do you want to put this fuel tank on? If you do, you need to cut out these little notches just there, which I do because I like lots of tanks to make things beefy. So I'm just getting our piece here. You can sort of see we've got these two little notches just here. Now a little tip in modelling, these number 11 blades that are on the end of here, they are really cheap to get your hands on. Just buy a load of them and just sort of make sure you've got a nice fresh blade, because when it comes to modelling, having a bit of a weak used blade and blunt one just makes life harder. It just makes things so much easier to just use a nice fresh blade. So I'm just cutting across this here, starting with the far edges, and I'm just sort of cutting across just a little score, right, either side like so. Then I'm going to come in from one end and just slice it across into the corner, the opposite end, and we're just shaving it off, right? We don't need to go in one big slice, slicing it all, because it's just, you have to apply more pressure. It's a bit more sort of harder to press it down, right? More chance of mistakes. But if we're just shaving it off, getting those little curls, then we can come from the opposite side and again just slice in to the corner on the opposite side, right? And we can just keep on going along, just shaving this off until we're close to the edge. Now we could go right up to the edge, right, and really sort of, you know, try and just get it as close as possible, right? But in modelling, it is so much harder to fill something than it is just to sort of cut something a bit more. If we come to the end and try and fit our fuel tank into these little slots here, and it doesn't fit because it's too tight, we just come along with the blade and we just do some more slicing, right? But if we've cut too deep, right, we've got to do some filling, which is going to be more time consuming and harder and not look as professional. So always try and leave a little lip or something, and we can sort of trim it to a better size later on down the line and make it fit that way, rather than trying to get it right up to the edge as perfect as possible. So we'll just do the rest of that on camera. The next thing we want to look at is some matte paint.